My name is Senator Mary Caferro, and I'm here today to talk about the primary election coming up on June 3rd. Today we'll be interviewing Janet Ellis, who is running for the legislature in House District 81. Welcome, Janet, and nice to have you here. Thanks for taking the time to be with me.
It's great to be here, Mary. Thanks for giving me this opportunity.
So we'll visit for about 15-20 minutes, and I just wanted to give the voters the opportunity to hear a little more from you. For example, before we get started on the nuts and bolts of the campaign, tell us a little bit more about yourself, please.
Okay, I have been living in Helena since, off and on since 1981, but permanently since 1989. Got married here in 1990. My son just graduated from Helena High School in 2013. As a matter of fact, I think our children walked down the aisle together in graduation, so they just got assigned that way. My husband is a state employee, and I work for the Audubon Society, a nonprofit here in Helena.
So talk a little bit about your community ties. I understand you have really deep, long-term ties to the community, been involved in some volunteerism, even spearheaded a fundraising effort for the arts. Speak a little bit about that, if you would, please.
Okay. Well, the specific topic that you talked about was with the Myrna Loy, and about 15 years ago the Myrna Loy almost went under, and a couple of us heard about it, and we ended up rolling up our sleeves, and it's when I met Ed Noonan for the first time, and we had a meeting, figured out how to do some fundraising, and my job was to write a fundraising appeal letter and get that sent out. So I had a bunch of people stuffing envelopes and doing all that, and we raised about $21,000 to get the Myrna Loy back on its feet. And I've been friends with Ed Noonan ever since, and he obviously has been going on to run the Myrna Loy and do great things for the arts since then. But we live just down the street from the Myrna Loy, and it's been in our lives for a long time. One of the other things I wanted to bring up is how even though you think about me and my background in conservation, we have done other things for the community, and I've been a longtime member of a number of organizations like the Holter. We've been involved in the food share, the food bank for quite a few years. In particular, this is my husband's volunteer project more than mine, but I do end up going to events periodically and helping with the postal drive occasionally and things like that. But my husband has actually been a volunteer at Montana Food Share for almost 25 years. Wow. 3 nights a week, and he does he's been going there 3 nights a week for almost 25 years, which is really incredible. And it's one of the things that we've done in the community because we believe that every single human and citizen has some basic needs, and obviously food is a basic need.
Thank you for that. There was one other thing I was thinking about. Of course, being able to eat and have shelter and health care is a human right, and also a woman's right to choose. So I think that you've been involved in some volunteerism for the organizations that work hard to make sure women have access to health care and reproductive justice. Is that correct?
Well, I've been a longtime supporter of both Planned Parenthood and Montana NARAL, and have been endorsed by Montana NARAL. Planned Parenthood is endorsing in the primary. The other thing I did want to mention that you were talking about basic human rights, and it brings up my involvement in healthcare and interest in healthcare, perhaps that's a better way to say it. But my sister is a freelance writer, and she struggled with healthcare when she got cancer. As you can imagine, healthcare is not, there used to be pre-existing conditions and all that kind of stuff. Everything's changing now. But to see a person that's employed, self-employed, try to get the health care they need is really has been a challenge. And I'm hoping the system is shifting now, but as you know, everything's in flux. But health care and making it affordable is really important to me and my family.
So as your sister struggled, I hope things turned out for her.
Yes.
I've heard people describe having cancer as being secondary to trying to navigate the system.
Yeah, and she ends up, she did find health care coverage, and
Good.
then she does have to get treated for the rest of her life, every 6 months. It's a type of lymphoma that she has, and so it's an ongoing thing, but that's is keeping her from having her in remission, and it's really, really critical.
Thanks for sharing that personal information.
Mm-hmm.
So you talked about that you work for the Audubon Society. Tell us what you do for the Audubon.
Okay. Well, my background is biology, and I've been, I do the public policy work for Montana Audubon, so I'm involved up at the legislature as a citizen advocate. I talk to legislators. I always look at my work at the legislature as environmental education for adults, because they haven't had that sort of science background probably since high school. Mm-hmm. And so my organization is really science-based, and it's bringing good information, important information about the impacts of different issues to legislators who wouldn't otherwise get that information.
And so your experience as a citizen advocate, how do you think that's prepared you or set you up for holding office, for being a legislator?
I think understanding how to read policy and think about policy is really a skill. And one of the things I think with my science background that really helps is having the ability to look at facts and back up and be able to generalize and see what the policy implications are from those facts. And I think that's one of the things I've been very successful at over the years. I have a good reputation up there of passing a lot of legislation, and I think it will help me be a quick study on issues that I don't know about or are new to me, I guess. I'm not afraid to network either. That's how, as you know, you don't work in a vacuum up at the Capitol at all. It's not like you write a piece of legislation and you can get it passed. You have to talk to people. There's 150 legislators that have opinions, not all of them on your bill, but some of them do. And so as a result, you have to listen. And you have to decide what's really important and keep your core values really strong, but also learn how to understand and listen to what other people have to say so you can fold that into your legislation. A lot of times it's stuff you didn't think about before in terms of impacts, and you don't want those impacts. And so you're always changing things and changing perspectives, but keeping a base value of what you want to accomplish so you don't lose sight of that. Or at some point, you end up killing your own legislation because it doesn't do what you want anymore.
Right. So being a citizen advocate, that sounds to some people like a lobbyist. Mm-hmm. And I was a lobbyist, and I was a citizen advocate, and I was a community organizer. I thought, like you just explained, those skills set me up really well for the legislature. I think I was a better legislator having had that background. I don't think being a lobbyist is a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. But could you talk a little bit more about your experience on working? Everyone knows you as a strong conservation individual advocate. When I first ran in 2004, I got labeled as a single issue candidate, and I, thought that was kind of interesting. But they like to label us as something. So
Right.
that was the label I received for being an expert in human services, which is kind
Yeah.
of funny. It's a pretty broad area. Could you speak a little bit about, first off, I don't know if that's been your experience, it may have been, but being labeled as a single issue candidate. Could you speak a little bit about issues you've worked on, not only conservation, but outside of conservation as well?
Well, the one thing that in particular I did in recent legislative sessions, in 2013, I was able to work with Senator Christine Kaufman, and we got a bill passed to help crack down on dark money, the anonymous campaign money coming into Montana to impact our elections. And what we did was, I had been involved in a ballot measure. I filed a complaint with the Office of Political Practices. It was just that the materials going out from this group that had gotten $3 million to work on 3 ballot measures in Montana was coming out with attribution indicating who was printing up the material, who did the website, all those kinds of things. So I filed a complaint with the Office of Political Practices, and it took them 2 years to tell me there was no name at the bottom of the material. And they said, oh, and the election is over, and so there's really nothing we can do about this. Well, what I did was take that experience and was able to craft legislation, talking to the Office of Political Practices and others, to try to expedite the enforcement of all those things. Everybody can, it's a really black and white issue, whether there's a name at the bottom of the material or not. And being in Montana, we can all figure out who probably wrote that material. And so now the Office of Political Practices can just, when they get a complaint like that there's no attribution, they can just send a cease and desist order and basically get that taken care of really quickly, rather than put it in order with all the other complaints, and then when it comes out, they look at it and then they write a report. They don't have to do any of that anymore. So now they get to concentrate on the more important enforcement issues, which is really important.
Well, I think that's an excellent bill, with all of the dark money that came in with the U.S. Senate race was that just last election cycle, 2012? Yeah. Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it. It was terrible. And Montana voters appreciate knowing who's saying what.
Right.
So that it's not so confusing.
And so what I think that particular bill indicates is I can go into an area. I was in front of committees I'd never been in. I didn't know how legislators thought about the issue. I had to listen to the ramifications of things that we wrote that we didn't really want to have happen, and then adjust things. And in the end, it got bipartisan support and passed, and it helps the Commissioner of Political Practices every day with those complaints now.
Right. So you actually took your experience in the conservation world and transferred it over to a new issue, which is important to be able to do. So it's not just knowing the issues, it's knowing how to get the work done.
Right.
Speaking of that, what are you hearing on the campaign trail? Because I know that it sounds like in the work that you've done, you listen a lot to people, build consensus, try to facilitate access to our democracy. What are you hearing on the campaign trail?
Well, I think one of the most important things I can do in my campaign is go talk to the voters in the district. And I have been through the district almost twice now, part of the district a third time. And the main issues, there's a lot of state employees. They're very concerned about pension plans and the GABA, and I've been trying to educate myself about those issues because they're fairly new to me, but it is something that I'm really concerned about and I need to learn more about. Medicaid expansion is a big issue. There's quite a few people that not only work in healthcare in the district, but they also just think we have to, as citizens of Montana, take care of people's healthcare needs. 70,000 people could potentially get Medicare or Medicaid if the expansion goes through, and I will be one of those people advocating for that.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. That's one of my babies is access to health care for all people.
And it has to be quality access. It
Quality.
can't- Yeah.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people go to the emergency room now, but that's not what you want to have happen at all.
No.
You want them to take care of themselves. I was talking to a woman at the grocery store yesterday, and she told me about her bout with cancer that she had a few years ago, and how much, I think they racked up about $150,000 worth of bills in no time whatsoever. That would have taken her house and her retirement that she had if she did not have health care. And it's just those kinds of circumstances that you just want to avoid. It would be a disaster for families.
Yep. Well, I'm glad that you're passionate about that and
Yeah.
other things as well.
Yeah.
And so we're about ready to wrap up.
Okay.
You're right. Your son did walk with my daughter in graduation. My daughter, when I told her about you running, she said, "Oh, I know her son." So speaking of your son, I understand he helped you with your campaign.
Yes. My son's very pleased that I'm running for the legislature, and when he just started in college in last fall, and he had January off, and so he was on doors all through January with his mom, knocking doors and telling people why they should support me for the legislature, and that was just wonderful, as you can imagine. Plus, he's been voting ever since he was turned 18. He turned 18 on a Sunday and got to vote on a Tuesday, and he had met a lot of the people that he got to vote for, and because Helena is so small, Christine Kaufman lived down the street, and so he met Denise Juneau. It was really it's good that he's interested in being an active citizen in Montana.
Yeah, kids are great, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, and they're your best supporters. They love their moms running for office.
They do. They
really,
do.
really proud.
Yes.
I know he's also on a piece of your literature, and I know this is a stretch, but do you remember what the saying is that he has a quote?
Yes.
Daniel has a quote on a piece of literature for you.
Yeah.
And I love it, but I can't remember it. Can you remember it?
Yeah, it's a baseball piece because Danny's passion was Legion baseball. He played American Legion baseball at Kendrick Legion Field, and he was a catcher until last summer. And it said, "When I played for the Senators, I was batting .348, but if you vote for my mom, it'll be a home run." So that was nice.
I love it. That is so perfect. Well, I think that's a great place to end, and I want to thank you for taking the time to be with me today and to reach out to the voters in a different way besides going door to door once, 2, and 3 times.
Yeah.
And thank you for running for office.
Thanks for letting me talk to the people in Helena and explain a little bit more about myself.
You bet.
Mm-hmm.
So if you'd like more information on Janet, you can find her on Facebook, and you can get her contact information at her website, which is JanetEllisHD81.com. There it is on the screen. Again, please remember to vote on June 3rd, and thank you for your time.